zip code, and today we are looking into another cup of code. And the topic for the day is API documentation, and we will be looking at Swagger and how we can utilize Swagger to document our APIs. So this essentially comes very important when it comes to web API services. You could be writing it in Java, you could be writing it in C Sharp, ASP.NET, really doesn't matter. But with Java and let's say your IDE is IntelliJ, you can document your API in a YAML format because that's what a Swagger document is. It's in a YAML format. Apologies for that. It's an AMG outside making noise. But then yeah, so we we sort of when you're doing some development, we sort of try to document the APIs and sort of create the schemas for not only ourselves but also for testers and integration developers into our web services. So if you want to have a read, you can go to swagger.io and you can sort of have a look, see what's in there, read more on that. So of course Swagger is open source, so you can just utilize that. You can get SwaggerHub for free, where you can also host all of your Swagger documentation or your API documentation without paying anything, and you can see you can update your Swagger docs on your IDE and to reflect on the Docker Hub, and you can sort of mock testing your web backend services. So looking into the editor for Swagger, so it's simply editor.swagger.io. So if you want to land on the home page and to read more other tools, you just go to swagger.io, and then if you want to go to the editor, then you'll just go to editor.swagger.io, and you can also come here, then it will take you there. Then you can say try Swagger editor right there, and it'll take you straight to the document itself here. So one thing that we can do here, what we see on this side is a YAML format. So as I've mentioned, that a Swagger document is a YAML format, and it sort of has this key value pair format that it follows, and you have all your info, OpenAPI version 0.3, the info about the API title. Let's say this one is like Swagger Pet Store API 3.0, but let's say you are creating a sales backend web services. You just want to provide sales, let's say sales reporting API. So it's Open API 3.0, so it definitely updates on the fly, and you can just remove all of these and add what you want to type in here. Let's say this is a sales reporting backend web API, and it only retrieves sales reports that feeds different views and external external systems for reporting purposes. Let's just put it that way. So essentially, as you type all of this, you see how the document would look like. So if you give it to someone and they open the document, so if you take this YAML format and you save it as a .yaml file, it's going to be YAML, and then when they open it, they're gonna see something like this. Of course, not on an editor, but on the web, it will look something like this. And then they can read the definition of the API, and if you want to add maybe your company details, and you can just do that, like terms of service. Then let's say maybe you want to put your website here. You just want to say, let's just do that, zip code.com for the terms of service, and then you want to say API team dot zip code .com, and that will be that. But we have developer at zipcode.com. And yeah, guys, if you do have some questions, you can forward them at developer at zipcode.com. That's still fine, there's no issues with that. And we can also have some licensing which you can leave here. So let's also scroll down to the nitty-gritties of the actual documentation. So this will be the server, one thing that I want to speak on as well. This will be your server where your API will be running at. On our case, to be zipcode.com. Let's say /, sales /report / let's just start from API as the suffix, and yeah, let's do this. Say v3 sales report, and then everything else, every other endpoint will then follow sort of these base URL. So this will be the base URL where everyone would need to get to before they hit your endpoints. And then once this is in place, you can then put different endpoints here, as you can see that reflects there. And if I want to add another server, let's say you have two servers or not servers rather, but let's say you have a local or an IP address that you want to open, or a machine. So let's just say 272.0.0.1, and let's say port 8080, and that will be that. And let's see now, so now you have two different servers that you can hit at different times. This would be also in a case where maybe you want to test, let's say this one would be a live server, and then this one would be like a DR server, where they can also hit to test a DRO different machine. But this is what you can sort of play around with on your API endpoint. And then so what your testers would need to look at is the endpoints themselves. And now let's see what those look like. So before we talk about the actual endpoints here, I want you to understand that everything that happens here, it actually comes from the schemas sort of tag, and the schemas tag has the actual objects and how they look like, and what data types they are, and what do they expect, or what response you're going to get. So the schemas are actually the objects that you interact with, and the definitions of what they are, and how they look like. So these are what you are going to essentially need to know and understand, because when you look at an API, you have a request body. This will be your request body. This will where your response also will be. So as you can see, this is API response, a code, a type, and a message. So developers would know that you having such a response is nice, but also, like, if you want to have something that is more meaningful, is to add like a data field here. The data could be of an abstract type, where you can pass it in an employee data, You can pass in vehicle data, you can pass in pet name data, or you can pass anything, any object that will be on a data field here. Let me put that into perspective so that you can see. Let's go to schemas right here, and let me add it here so that you can see what I mean. Just scroll down, scroll down. These are all the text, these are all the text. In actual fact, let me just do this instead of me scrolling all the way down. Let me see. Yes, the components. So you can shorten this and go to what we're looking for. So these are the schema definitions. As you can see, this is like this is the order schema, this is the type of object and the properties of that schema. It has an ID, it has a pet ID, it has quantity, and it has ship date, and it has status. And you can see the object, the field itself can be an object, and you can also put this let's say you want to reuse the status, you can put status as a schema, and you can just reference it at this level, and it will pick it up that, oh, at this on this field I need to pass in an object of type status, and it will just bring it up for you, and to be able to give an example of what it expects there. If it's a request body, and if it's a response, it's going to filter that in for you as well. um, so the one thing that I wanted to show you was on the API response. um, let's go to the API response real quick. And so you see here you have a message of type string, but now let's say you add something like data, which will actually have, which will contain or host your actual we'll just call this object, right? So this data field is where your data will actually sit. So if you're retrieving employees, the data field will contain a list of employees. If you are returning one employee, the data will have one employee. And in the code, the message, the type in the message, then you might maybe pass in to say 200 if it's fine, 201 if you created something, then 400 if it's a bad request. And you also, if you have a validation exception, you can just put that validation exception here to say this particular request failed because of the required fields were not passed in or something like that. And that will sort of help make your APIs better, because then the testers are able to know what's going on and what failed at which level. But here there's no like an error definition, which is something that I highly recommend. You can add like an error definition, you can add a schema for an error, how exceptions will look like as well, so that if it fails, let me just see. Okay, these are servers. Let's just put something at this level here. Let's do this. Error codes, let's just call it error codes, right? So now let's just do that, and let's say error code, let's say 200. This essentially means okay, request ran successfully. And also you want to say maybe 400, say bad request. This would be client request failed, please check the request, right? So this would be something like this essentially. That's what we're trying to say. So you put more documentation, of course, based on what you need, and so that the users of your API documentation would know that, oh, okay, if I see the 200 error, or let me not call them error code, let me call them response codes. Yes, response code. So then this will be 200, 400, 500, which will be like an internal server error, failure, and then you would handle those accordingly. So essentially, API documentation has everything to do with letting know the users of your APIs and the testers of your APIs that if you want to use this API, this is what you need to have in place before you can hit any endpoint. And if something goes wrong, this is what it means, and this is how you can go about dealing with it, so that you can have your issue resolved. So now let's get on the parts real quick. Let's get on the parts. We already have the schemas and what the schemas look like. So now we can just look at the parts. Let's open the patch. So with HTTP CRUD operations, you got the get, the put, the post, and the delete. Of course, there are other ones. You have like patch and more functions for HTTP operations, but mostly you'll be utilizing these for methods. So on the put, let's say you want to update something, so you want to update an existing path as it says here according to the definition. So if you check the paths on this side, you have path, which is what we have here, and it is a put method, and it has, let's scroll down, it has a summary. It says update existing pad, description, updating existing pad by ID, or we update an existing pad by ID. All right, so which means I should be able to pass in an ID as part of my update request. So we'll see an ID here of 10. So if I try this request out, I should be able to, let's say, execute. Now let's see this, and we got a response of 200, and that request ran through with all of this. So that's our successful operation. This is the response that we got, and everything is looking good. So let's try submit something else. So let's change this to say pitbull. Nobody likes pitbull these days because they are not doing they're not behaving, it seems. So let's try this and let's have a look, and we ran our request, and now we need to see the responses. Pitbull, yes, this is what we ran, and this is successful response, right? So as you can see, we put in pitbull and pitbull is there, and as it also aligns to our example response. On a successful response, this is what we're supposed to get. This is what needs to look like, and it sort of looks that way here on our response, and everything is fine, and that is happiness. So essentially you can do the same thing for all these other ones. Let's say get find pet by status, find pet or pet ID. Let's say let's find the pet or pet ID, and let's say try it out, and now it's gonna give us that. Let's say ID 10, let's say execute. Now let's see what we got. HTTP response, we get an, oh, of course, we are using my server, so I'm not gonna get anything here. But let's just put back. I've already updated a lot of things here, so I can just open an editor again. Let's just open a new editor here. Let's see. It's already catch that one. Let's just say editor. Swagger.io. because I want you guys to see the actual updates. I don't want that. Now it's already in my cache, and now I want to say I don't want to clear the editor. I want a new one. I want a new one. Yeah, try on new editor. Yes, I want to try new editor. Let's see if it won't come back with that stuff. Course. Alright, let's see the details here. So this is their latest editor, and it's essentially doing the same thing. There's nothing fancy. You're still defining your APIs as usual. You're still writing it in a YAML format. You still have your schemas, schema definitions, and it's all the same thing. You have your payload there, so there's nothing fancy, nothing shocking, which is a good thing as well. And I want to say, let's just scroll down here. Let's see what we got here. And this is the example, which is sort of nice. And you also have your schemas here and the definitions and how it looks like. I think this is going to look much nicer. This is going to look much nicer. I think testers would even fall in love with this. They would fall in love with this. Let's set this in action. Right, and that's that. Alright, so this is where it's going, guys, and this is where you would want to be also going forward. So we need to start familiarizing yourself with the new one and the new way of writing Swagger, and that will essentially, it's still the same thing. There's nothing different. I just wanted to go back to the Swagger API here. Let's just do this. Let's see. Let me just take it back to editor.swagger.io, and I want to do that. So it's on that one, which is fine. Then let's try this out, and let's put people. Let's execute. Let's see. Now let's do this. Ha! Method not allowed. Right, which means this is the wrong endpoint that I'm hitting here. Oh, what was this endpoint? I definitely need to get this endpoint back. All right, but yeah, you sort of get the idea, guys. Once these comes back with a success, then you can go get the pad, and you can essentially try it out. Then you can put the pad 10 and hit execute. And this is how essentially your testers also go about testing your APIs. They would create data, maybe create a pad, and after creating a pad, they then try to retrieve that pad by ID, um, find the pad by status, find the pad by tag, and then try update the pad, and then try delete the pad. And if all of these succeed, then obviously it means your API is working fine. And if the testers are happy and they give you thumbs up, then you can go ahead and build that to release, and you should be having your web application good to go for that particular domain. But also this speaks to test-driven design. You want to also have unit tests in your code. Make sure that you test your APIs after development before you hand them over to testers to run them for you. And with all that being said, guys, I really appreciate your time, Please do like and subscribe for more, and we'll definitely see you in the next one. Enjoy.